Welcome, dear friends, to the Sutta study group. Big respects to Ayya Sobhana and greetings to all the Dhammadharini, bhikkhunis and venerables and lay friends. Welcome to you all. And as usual, I think we could start with a short period of meditation. And we're going to look at one or two suttas after that. And then possibly we'll have time for some meditation also at the end. So let's begin with 5-10 minutes of silent sitting together, just to allow ourselves to arrive and settle into this Sangha space. Oh, dear friends, we can just gradually open the eyes and come into this space. Welcome again, everyone. Big welcome to the Venerable that are on your Bodhi as well. Nice to see that you're able to be with us. May the Wi-Fi continue for you. So we have an opportunity today to take in one or maybe more suttas or teachings from the Pali Canon. I'd like to offer teaching around the time of Sariputta coming into contact with the Buddha's teachings. And it's actually from the Vinaya Pitaka, from the Kandakas, the great books of the law. And this first book, the great book in the Kandakas, is really quite remarkable because it tells us what happened from the moment that the Buddha became the Buddha, right through to meeting his first disciples, ordaining his first disciples, and the insights and realizations and attainments of those first disciples. It's really very inspiring to read this account, historical account, full of the Dharma teachings, that begins with the enlightenment of the Buddha. So I'd like to bring up this section from the great book, where Sariputta meets one of the Buddha's disciples. Let's begin. So this is the account of the going forth of Sariputta and Moggallana. Sariputta Moggallana Pabaja Kata. At this time, the wanderer Sanchaya was staying at Rajagaha with a large group of 250 wanderers, including Sariputta and Moggallana. So they're in another group of spiritual seekers. They've been practicing for quite some time. They're both very motivated to seek the end of suffering, to seek the spiritual goal as far as they understand it. The two of them had made an agreement that whoever reached the deathless first would inform the other. This word amata, this is what they were seeking, the deathless, the way out of suffering, the way out of birth and death. Just then, Venerable Assaji, one of the Buddha's first 5 disciples, you probably all know, but just in case any of you don't know, Venerable Assaji was one of the first 5, the 5 companions of the Buddha who'd been practicing with him for 5 or 6 years before he became the Buddha. And so they were Assaji and the other 4 companions, along with the Buddha. They were practicing extreme asceticism. As many of you will know, they were punishing their bodies and minds, really, in so many different ways, living a very extreme lifestyle of renunciation, taken to the max, you could say. And Assaji was one of these companions of the Buddha for all this time. And then the Buddha had a change of heart. He understood, he remembered as a child experiencing jhana, experiencing peace in his meditation practice as a 5-year-old boy sitting out in nature. And he realized there's something about that experience that's important for me to pursue and to investigate further. And so he started to, or rather stopped the ascetic practices, and he started to eat normally and receive alms, healthy food, and he gained strength, and he began to practice in a different way. And consequently became the Buddha, fully enlightened one. And so he then sought out, and it's in this great book, in the Vinaya Pitaka, we hear how the Buddha, over the course of time, after about a month, or 5 or 6 weeks after he became the Buddha, he sought out these companions and he taught them the first teaching, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, turning of the wheel of Dhamma. And Assaji became, over time, became a stream enterer, first of all, and then he became an arahant. So a little bit later, Sariputta meets Venerable Assaji. So we'll go back to the sutta. So then Venerable Assaji put on his robe in the morning, took his bowl and robe, entered Rajagaha for alms food. He, Venerable Assaji, was pleasing in his conduct, in going out and coming back, in looking ahead and looking aside, in bending and stretching his arms. His eyes were lowered, and he was perfect in deportment. The wanderer Sariputta observed all of this and thought, this monk is one of those in the world who are perfected, or surely on the path to perfection. So this is very interesting just to take in. Two things really for me. One is the deportment of the Venerable Assaji, how this is described for us, what an impact it made on Sariputta is the second thing, that Sariputta was very open to appreciating, noticing, being impressed by the very, how could we say, calm, unruffled, unshakable peace of this person who he just meets on the road. The story a little bit further back in this great book, there's the story of Upaka, the wanderer, who meets the Buddha on the road in a similar way, and who is similarly impressed by the deportment, by the radiance of this being, and who also approaches the Buddha and asks him questions with a rather different outcome. But we won't go into that right now. So I'd like to pause here and just having taken in this first part of the teaching where Sariputta sees Venerable Assaji and is immediately interested, impressed, wishes to approach him, sees him as one of the perfected ones or somebody very close to perfection. So I'd like to invite if anyone has any comments, questions, or reflections at this point. Especially like to invite Ayasobana, if you have anything to put to offer at this point, feel very free, of course.
Not yet.
Okay. Sharanya.
So I am of the impression that you can perhaps identify someone based on your own evolution, right? So Sariputta must have been pretty high there to be able to see that in Assaji. I don't know, it was just a comment. I don't know if that's a common belief that when you're an arahant, you can recognize another, but when you're not, you don't recognize an arahant.
Thank you so much, Sharanya. Yeah, this is for me such an interesting point, that Sariputta is very open, very ready to appreciate what is right before him. And it does, yeah, absolutely bring that sort of understanding that, what is it that enables us to be ready, when the Buddha appears, when the saint appears, to actually appreciate this monumental happening, and that we, can seize the moment and open to the Dharma. And how often, perhaps, do we not notice? do people, fail to appreciate, what's in front of their eyes? And it's a very interesting question. And of course, they say you have to be one to see one, to know one. You have to be in the same way, in the same stream, or have the same realizations in order to fully appreciate. And that's fair enough. But Sariputta was certainly open. How wonderful. Ananea.
Well, you just actually said what I was thinking is that one, it does take one to know one, I'm sure. And also, but what I get the impression, along with what Sharanya noticed, is that clearly Sariputta was seeking. He had been open, or he had some kind of level of interest in this, or just in general spiritual life of some sort, that all of a sudden, it's not like, I don't think, however old he was, say he was 40 years old and he's walking along and he sees somebody. Now, it's not impossible, probably, but that it's just unlikely that he would have just all of a sudden seen someone and gone, oh, look at that person. They're really bright. I think he had a long something going on there before he happened to see Asaji.
Thank you so much, Ananea. Ayasobana.
Yes. Since according to the story, Sariputta was not enlightened at this time, he's going to be enlightened in a couple of minutes. So we might consider, in terms of the paramis, as something which is the preparation that makes one ready. Those 6 or 10 virtues, depending on your tradition, that can be developed up to the very highest level. And this shows the value in trying to cultivate those qualities. The word sankhara, which is sometimes called formation, it sometimes is applied to thought or intention. But I heard that in the Brahmanical tradition, sankhara has to do with when you're going to do a ceremony, you do certain preparations, getting all of the things together, like all of the bits that you want to have on the altar when you're going to do your ceremony. It's to have the preparation for the magic to happen. And so this also is something that's like very attainable for us, even though we don't know when or how our awakening will come, to set the table for our awakening, to make that preparation.
Thank you, Aya. Yes, it's a real invitation, isn't it? I feel, to be open. And one of the qualities of the stream enterer is, that understanding that all that arises passes away, that there's nothing to hold on to. When this constant change is so apparent, enables this kind of attitude, this kind of way of being, enables us to be present for what's actually happening, to be able to see clearly what's in front of us and to seize the moment. It reminds me a little bit, I have a very Christian background, some of you know, and it does remind me rather of the Good Samaritan, walking along the road and you see someone in trouble. Now, most of us, I'm sure, would stop and help. But the point is that it was one person who had the ability to drop, everything else, the agenda, where they were going, where they'd come from, and so forth. And this is really how we want to conduct ourselves, to live our lives as if we were stream enterers, that we don't have anything happening. There is no agenda, there is no past, and there's no future. So there's nothing that needs to happen in any particular way in the future. So therefore, whatever's happening now that is requiring a response or investigation. We're ready. We're here. This is it. There's nothing else. There's no distraction. And so Sariputta, you know, to me, he's manifesting this quality. He's not yet seen the Dharma, you know, clearly, but he has that ability to engage with the opportunity as it presents itself. How wonderful. And actually, in this great chapter of the Vinaya Pitaka, we're learning as we read that the Buddha kept on meeting people who were ready to receive his teaching. And even Upaka, who I can just mention, the person who met the Buddha on the road, although he wasn't impressed with the teaching at that time, and he turned away and just went off, not really drawn in by the Buddha's teaching, the Buddha's direct teaching that he received. Nevertheless, he came back to it later and later ordained. So everyone the Buddha was meeting, there was this incredible kind of effect from the time of the Buddha's enlightenment. So many people who were already seekers, as Ajahn Sobhana says, the table was there. They were ready. They were at the table. They'd done a lot of the preliminary work. And so they, you know, there was this incredible constellation, you could say, of events that happened where so many people were ripe and ready for the Dharma. It's really very inspiring. And so Sariputta was one of these. Okay, friends, let's go back to the sutta now, to the teaching. So just to repeat, so Venerable Assaji robed up in the morning, took his bowl and robe, entered Rajagaha for alms food. He was pleasing in his conduct, in going out and coming back, in looking ahead and looking aside, in bending and stretching his arms. His eyes were lowered, and he was perfect in deportment. The wondrous Sariputta observed all this and thought, this monk is one of those in the world who are perfected, arahant, or on the path of to perfection. So why don't I go up to him and ask in whose name he has gone forth and who is his teacher, or whose teachings does he follow? But it occurred to Sariputta, it's the wrong time to ask him. He's walking for alms food among the houses. Let me follow behind him, for one who seeks the path will find it. So a little pause here, just to comment really how interesting, how amazing that in this case Sariputta has the patience, the restraint, the discipline to notice beyond his own agenda, which is his very dearly held urgent agenda that he's been carrying for many years of practice, to find out, to have this guidance, to make the most of this opportunity. There are many other cases, as many of you will know, in the suttas where people came across an arahant, including the Buddha himself, in such ways, and simply couldn't wait and would approach and, you know, and be told, this is not quite the right time, please just wait a little while. But actually the energy is so strong to find out, who is this person, what is your teaching, who is your teacher. So I'm quite struck by the fact that Sariputta was able to restrain himself, to see the bigger picture, to think of the other, and to wait until the right time. So returning to the passage. After walking for alms in Rajagaha, Assaji turned back with his alms food. Venerable Sariputta then went up to him and exchanged pleasantries with him. Again, he's behaving really appropriately and not hassling or pressing or putting any sort of pressure on Venerable Asaji. Polite greetings, exchanging a little bit of small talk, as you do. And then he asked, Venerable, your senses are clear and your skin is pure and bright. In whose name have you gone forth? Who is your teacher, or whose teaching do you follow? And the Venerable Asaji replies, there's a great ascetic, a Sakyan, who's gone forth from the Sakyan clan. I've gone forth in his name. He's my teacher, and I follow his teaching. And Sariputta, but what does he teach? And Asaji replies, I've only recently gone forth. I'm new to this spiritual path. I'm not able to give you the teaching in full, but I can tell you the meaning in brief. Sariputta replied, yes, please. And he added, speak little or much, but do tell me the meaning. I just want the meaning. For what's the point of a detailed exposition? So this is a very profound moment. There are so many teachings within these accounts of these great beings meeting. I find it very interesting that Sariputta is measured, he's patient, but he does have a sense of urgency. Please tell me the meaning. And it's very interesting. We had a wonderful session this morning, and Richard shared some experiences from his meditation, from his insights that he has had, and pointed out that, you know, we're studying the suttas, we're studying the teachings, we're taking in a lot of concepts, words, and so forth, and this is good. This is important. This is to be praised, you know, to learn the Buddha's teachings. But then when it comes to it, the actual insights, really, of course, as we all know, the words are simply pointing us in the right direction. And the insights come, and they are really beyond words, indescribable. And so I'm quite struck here that Sariputta is asking for not a lot of words. It doesn't have to be a lot of words. Just give me the meaning, just the essence. And as we'll see, Asaji responds in kind to this request. Anybody like to come in at this point? Anything that strikes you? Any questions? Maitri.
Thank you, Aye. Something that came to my mind, I can't remember exactly or pinpoint where I've read this, but I read that Sariputta in a different discourse probably, it said that Sariputta said to Asaji, you can just give me the brief summary and I can expand it for myself in all the detail, like that he just shows that he really had such a matured perception that he just needed the summary. And I think it also said that when Asaji uttered the first two lines, and he already had figured out the rest of it.
Yes, thank you so much, Maitri. Yeah, Sariputta had an incredible mind. I find it very interesting that Asaji, for instance, here says that he's only been a disciple for a short time and he can't really expound very well on the Dharma. And yet Asaji has realized the Dharma. So it's very interesting that, you know, some people are able to really transmit and clarify. And in the case of Sariputta, to really, how to say, create frameworks around the teaching of the Dharma, so valuable for others. And others who are realized beings may not necessarily be able to convey the teachings. As I just said, you know, realization is beyond words, and then you have to try and put into words, and some can and some cannot. And thank goodness, really, friends, isn't it? We have the Pali Canon, we have all these teachings so that we don't have to be eloquent at all. We can simply convey these teachings to one another. And that is really wonderful. But Sariputta, isn't it, Maitri, in so many suttas later on, Sariputta was such a gifted teacher, and he had the framework, particularly of the Four Noble Truths, that he could apply to anything. And he did. And it sort of gave the full picture of all the teachings within the framework, bringing them back to the Four Noble Truths as the fundamental paradigm, the lens that we want to look through to realize these teachings. So yeah, thank you for that. Richard.
Thank you. Sometimes there's a slight misunderstanding when Asaji says that he's not long gone forth, and so he doesn't know all about the Dharma. To become an Arahant, one simply has to stop this Chaitana, volitional formation of sankharas based on ignorance, and then, let go of all sensual desire for becoming. Of course, ignorance is shouted at the same time. But it doesn't mean that by magic or something, you suddenly know like the Buddha describes the Dharma in so many different ways, so many different facets, so many different, ways that this leads to that, leads to this, leads to that. It's not that at all. And that's why someone like Asaji would have to sit, and listen to the Buddha expand, which Arahants love to do. There's many sutras where even Arahants will say, hey, wow, this is fantastic. What a good way to look at things. Even Sariputta sometimes talks with another Arahant and he explains something and it's like, oh yeah, wow, that's fantastic. I didn't think of it that way, right? So there's no magic in Buddhism. It's not like, even the Buddha himself, when he describes as a bodhisattva, he describes so many things. When he went through the 12-fold chain of dependent origination, before that, he did not claim to be a Buddha until he understood that. When he understood the Four Noble Truths, he did not claim to be a Buddha until he understood that. Until he mastered all of the jhanas and formless states, he did not claim to be a Buddha until he had mastered that. So, even he had to use his ability, his mind, his reflection, and everything to study all these things. And I'm sure even after he became a Buddha, which is a self-enlightened Arahat, as he reflected more and more and more and more, certain patterns and things became knowledgeable to him, and then he could expound on that. But his mind was so profound in that state that once he learned those things, they were there in his mind all the time now. So it's like the story of the Prince Essem. Does he have all the Dharma in his mind at all times? He says, well, let me ask you a question. You're known to be a master of chariots. Are you constantly thinking of chariots every single second? No, but if someone asks you a question about a chariot, the information comes right there, and there it is. Because he had previously learned all that stuff or understood all those things. So I like to, and I'll say it again, there's no magic in Buddhism. It's, when you learn something that's true, that's in direct accordance with Dhamma, then that's that. There it is. Now you have it. Anyways, that's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
Sadhu, excellent points, Richard. Yeah, it's really interesting that, yes, the different kind of degrees of ability to convey the Dharma. And I think of the Buddha's ability to convey the Dharma in infinite ways and in its fullness and its entirety, which really is at least in the Theravada tradition, we appreciate that's a quality of a Buddha, someone, as Richard said, self-enlightened. I like to think of it as, he had a human capacity to think also because he's a human being, almost like a filing cabinet or like a library. He had the whole library at his disposal. He knew where to get the book. He knew how to search the library or the information database within. It was all there. And absolutely that Asaji was not noted as a teacher. Some of the realized beings were teachers and some were not. Some taught the Dharma in this way and some taught the Dharma in that way. But the Buddha could teach the Dharma to anyone. And that's a trait and that's a quality of a Buddha, right? That he can see out of great compassion, he can look around and see just what is going to be helpful for each and every individual. Quite remarkable, which is why we have so many teachings, right? Such a profusion, such an abundance of teachings, looking at the Dharma from so many different angles, because the Buddha was talking to different people, different places, different cultures, and conveying the Dharma in the way most helpful for them. Thank you so much for those comments, Richard. We have Aranya Bodhi with a hand up. Venerables, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Aya, we hear you loud and clear. And we see you too.
Okay. Okay, I just put the camera on. We have the flickering bandwidth, so I hope I don't disappear suddenly. But yeah, this is a very impressive meeting of two remarkable people. Both of them were striving, like prior to their meeting, after the Buddha's awakening, Asaji had encountered the Buddha, actually approached the five ascetics, but Sariputta was still searching. And then at this juncture here, Sariputta has been impressed just by the conduct, just the presence of this being. And so he's certain that he's going to hear something remarkable. And then I think Asaji I get from what the statement that Asaji made, I don't have the text in front of me, but just seeing and hearing it again, it was like he did have confidence that he could give a teaching in brief. And that I don't think he was doubting himself at all. But he was able to give such a profound teaching, as we'll see, that had a tremendous impact and it's continued. This brief teaching has continued to have an impact on the world. So yeah, I guess I shouldn't jump ahead. There's this kind of juncture between just a person's presence, a person's demeanor, and their ability to convey what another person needs. So I don't want to say much more because the text will reveal more of this. But yeah, thank you for sharing the sutta. I was expecting something else, so I didn't prepare. I didn't know what we were discussing today, so sorry I'm not more prepared. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Aya, for those wonderful comments. I think we can take up your prompt and go back to the passage and let's find out what Asaji, Venerable Asaji, had to say. So Sariputta has begged him to speak little or much, but tell me the meaning. I just want the meaning. What is the point of a detailed exposition? And Asaji gave this teaching to the wanderer Sariputta. Of causally arisen things, the Buddha has declared their cause as well as their ending. This is the teaching of the great ascetic. When he had heard this teaching, Sariputta experienced the stainless vision of the truth. Anything that has a beginning has an end. So we'll stop right there. Anything that has a beginning has an end. So Venerable Assaji is telling Sariputta, the teaching of the Buddha is that he could explain the cause and he could also explain the end. And Sariputta could appreciate, I guess, that this refers to absolutely everything. Absolutely every experience has a beginning, has an end, has a cause, and has a cessation. So, friends, I'd like to invite any reflections on this short, profound teaching. Any questions? Dilshan.
Yeah, permission from the Noble Triple Gem, permission from Venerable Sobana, permission from Venerable Brahmavara, and permission from all Venerable Bhikkhunis, Samaneris, Anagarikas at Dhammadarani, and Narayana Bodhi, and all devotees. I thought it's worth mentioning the 4 types of Sravakas in Buddha Sasana, which you can find in the Tripitaka. The Buddha talks about Uggaditanyu, Vipatitanyu, Neya, and Padaperuma. These are the 4 groups of people in the Buddha Sasana. So if you look at people like Venerable Sariputta or Upatis in lay life, and the layman named Bahir, then the layman Santisa, who was a minister for King Kosol, and then Ugrasen, who was a circus man. All these people attain the states of awakening upon hearing a few lines of Dhamma. So Buddha called them Uggaditanyu. So because of the parami levels, are so high, and their practice have been, they have been doing this for many eons. Now, even in the case of Venerable Sariputta, he was one of the chief disciples of the Buddha. So he has been accruing paramis for many eons. So that's why, that classification is there in the Tripitaka. Then Uggaditanyu, Vipatitanyu are people who are able to catch Dhamma, but it takes a bit of time. Then Neya are people, who needs mentorship. It takes a long time for them to catch Dhamma in order to attain a particular state of, awakening. Then the last person is called Padaparuma. So Padaparuma is a person who knows Dhamma. That person has a scholarly approach to Dhamma, like doing a PhD. That person knows all the Pali words and everything, but that person does not practice Dhamma. So Buddha, so there are different people, in the sutras. You can find the Potali, Pharaoh, Buddha called him Mukha Purusha, the empty man. You may go, because, he knew the Tripitaka and all the sutras and everything, but he had not even attained Sotapanna. So, but later on he became an Arahant. But I thought it's worth mentioning all the 4 disciples of the Buddha, which you can find in the Tripitaka. And thank you so much, and may Triple Gem bless you all.
Thank you so much, Dilshan. That's wonderful information for us all. Much appreciated. Sharanya.
So, Aya, I just wanted to share my reaction. So when I first read it and it said of things that have a cause, I was like, why didn't he say everything has a cause? And then maybe I thought, well, maybe Nibbana does not have a cause, which is why he didn't say, he said it the way he said it. And then in your explanation, you said almost everything has a cause. So I suppose he didn't make it an absolute because there's one exception, and that Nibbana does not have a cause. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that for sure. Everything that we can experience, that we can know, or you could put it this way, the five khandhas, the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, all of these things arise due to causes. And so everything that we know and everything that we relate to as me or mine, if we're not seeing clearly, everything that we hold to as existing exists due to causes. Because it exists due to causes, it can also cease to exist when the causes cease. So there is cessation. So all of this, all of samsara, arises due to causes. And nibbana is that which is beyond, or that which is causeless, that which is unconditioned, the deathless. In this teaching, we hear the word the deathless. This is what Sariputta has been seeking. So it is that which is not in perpetual flux, which is not constantly changing, and therefore unsatisfactory, a source of suffering for us. So yeah, I would say the answer to your question, the short answer is yes. Okay, Ren.
Thank you, Aya. As you were saying earlier, that the teaching itself is profound and cannot be put into words. And it's great that we have the sutta and be able to refer into it somehow. But the challenge is that to put a profound concept into words, and I feel that a lot is lost in translation. And to me, so what Richard shared, and thank you for sharing, Richard, because it brought up something really fresh in me with when I think he said something about when it happened, the stream entry, that suddenly he's, I don't know if I'm misquoting, but something about understanding reality, like understand where the pine tree is related to, or the birds related, and where things are. It makes sense. And I'm really, really curious about the anatomy of that experience, because from what I could grasp, again, I'm just grasping from concept, right? From what I could grasp is that it feels like it's the conceptual, the idea of understanding permanence, where things will begin with have an end. That concept, it's spread beyond the conceptual level. Is that it feels to me that is the maybe that's the process of awakening or stream entry. Because when I hear, oh, suddenly it makes sense, I understand what reality is, it's so vague to me. It's kind of like there's a Chinese saying that you're scratching your itch on the leg through a pair of boots. It's like I feel it because conceptually I get it, but it's still so foreign. Is it a sense of awareness, or because naturally one through this process doesn't understand how exactly the actual knowledge how things work. It feels to me it's more like a sensation, a feeling, and I really want to understand the anatomy of it, because that is a very fresh topic, thanks to the discussion today.
Thank you so much, Ren. I really appreciate your exploration here that you're voicing, because I think for many of us, this will be something that we feel similarly. We have the words, we have the concept, we have this pithy, short, direct, essential teaching on the nature of samsara, the nature of our predicament. And what do we make of that? So look, we can understand it. We can understand the words, and we can have an intellectual grasp of the teaching, and that is wonderful. And then what do? We're kind of, if we just stay with that, we're trying to scratch the itch through the boot. It's a brilliant simile. How unsatisfying. What we have to do is to put these teachings into practice, and we can't make ourselves have insights. We can't make the penny drop, but we can prepare the ground. We can set the conditions. It's as people have been saying about Sariputta, isn't it? That we understand that he was practicing for a very long time, perhaps many lifetimes, in order to come to this point where he was ready to hear this Dharma teaching, and for it to really land, as Richard said this morning, like a bomb going off, it's a bit violent, but to really land, to really impact and make the change, clarify, illuminate the mind, And we can't make these things happen, but we can certainly do the practice, which is, to consider the Buddha's teachings, particularly the Four Noble Truths, and to practice the Eightfold Path and give all our energy, give our priority to that. And then we're really setting the ground, we're setting the scene for the insights to arise. So it can be frustrating. It can be like the desire to realize this truth, the desire to be free from suffering is very powerful for many of us who practice. And it's such a wholesome desire. It's something actually to nurture, but also to recognize the suffering in that, and to, keep letting go of the suffering aspect of it, but to allow this desire, this yearning for realization to propel us in the practice. So sadhu to you, Ren, and may we come to the end of all frustration, and may the itch be fully scratched.
Thank you, Ai.
And I'm really delighted to invite Richard to speak, because Richard, you may have something else, but if you also want to respond to what Ren has been saying, feel very free.
Thank you, Aya. As far as this section of Sutta, or it could be from the Vinaya, I'm not sure, that you're going over now. Unfortunately, I came in a little late because for some reason the link wasn't working for me, and I was trying to connect. Finally, I went back to an older email that has the regular links, and then I got in. So I kind of missed the very beginning, so I'm not sure where you're getting this from. But in this section here, of those things, or when that word is being used, things, and then Sariputta's reply, Sabbe Dhamma, it's Sabbe Dhamma, it's all Dhammas. A little bit of that is lost in this translation of things into English, and you'll see this a lot throughout people's translations of the suttas. A lot of times, especially with Sabbe Dhamma, they'll say all things. So it's a little more important to understand that, in my opinion, is the word Dhamma means objects in reality. So, objects as opposed to subject. Like we're experiencing everything as an object, right? And if you come down to it, even your own body and your senses and everything, and your own thoughts in your head, those are just objects arising, right? So, and all the teachers called their teaching Dhamma. It's not like, okay, the Buddha taught Dhamma and all these other teachers, like if you go, I don't know how far you're going to go into this, but go further along, Sariputta and Mahamoggallana go back to their teacher, and he had his Dhamma that he taught. And what they were trying to say is, this is the way the universe is. This is the way reality is. And then there were a few teachers that said, I don't really know how it is, and that's all we can know. You know what I mean? So they don't say anything. Buddha called, I think, eel wrigglers or something. You know, if you try to grab an eel, it's so slippery, you know, you can't get. So he called that kind of person with that idea, like an eel wriggler, right? So anyways, I think it's important just to understand that when you're seeing this, you know, those things or all things or whatever, it's specifically talking about anything that can arise and cease. And not all things Buddha describes as being able to arise and cease. And Nibbana is not something that arises. If Nibbana arose, then it could cease and you could lose it. So Nibbana is a dhatu. And a lot of times dhatu is translated as element, but it doesn't really mean element. It means state. So it's the Nibbana state. You attain the state of Nibbana, right? Or if you're looking at the, say, the 4 gross elements, right? It's earth is the state of solidity. Water is the state of liquidity. They didn't have modern science. They didn't know about atoms and molecules and things like we do now. I think some of these translation of words came from the influence of modern science, you know, upon the original people who were trying to understand this and explain it. But it really just means states. Dhatu, states. So as far as Ren was saying, she quoted you as saying that it can't really be put into words. And I'm not sure if that was a totally accurate quote, because I didn't get that impression when you were speaking. The Buddha spent an awful long time putting things in words. And like you brought up, he described Nibbana as the deathless, and there's several other ways that he describes it. Okay? So, but one's own experience of it, one can do the best to try to put it in words and try to explain it to somebody else. But until you experience it yourself, you don't really completely comprehend it. So I think there's a Zen saying, only the drinker, I'm not quoting correctly, but only the drinker of the water, you know, knows the taste, right? I mean, how do you describe? Well, here, have some water. It tastes great. What do you mean? What does it taste like? Well, you know, water. I mean, you know, you can't convey that so easily, right? So that, yes, one's own experience to another who hasn't had that experience, you can't convey. But if another has had that experience, they can understand, you know, basically, you know, what you're talking about in that way. So I would be careful not to limit my mind in thinking, oh, this cannot be described in words, because if that's true, then what was the Buddha doing all this talking for? it wouldn't make any sense, right? Anyways, that's just my opinion, but thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Richard, for those great comments. I'll invite Maitri now.
Thank you, Aye. Just wanted to, I found this, again, looping back to what Richard said at the beginning, the first time around, that Asaji was already an Arahant, and he knew the Dhamma inside out, like he's penetrated it, seen it. I found this thing on Great Disciples of the Buddha by Nyanaponika Thero. And it says about this meeting over here on this thing, and I was gonna, if it's okay, I was gonna read a little passage here. It says, when Upatissa asks, what does the Venerable One's master teach? What does he proclaim? And Venerable Asaji replies, question thus, the elder Asaji thought to himself, these wandering ascetics are opposed to the Buddha's teaching. I shall show him how profound this teaching is. Thinking this way, he said, I am but new to the training, friend. It is not long since I went forth from home, and I came but recently to this doctrine and discipline. I cannot explain the Dhamma in detail to you. The wanderer replied, I am called Upatissa, friend. Please tell me according to your ability, be it much or little. It will be my task to penetrate its meaning by way of 100 or 1,000 methods. And this is kind of the, I think, where I had seen it. And my feeling was that Venerable Asaji obviously had some reasoning for giving him a short teaching, whatever the reasoning was. It says here that apparently there were so many wandering ascetics and the Nigantas and lots of different it was a time where there was so many people, so many seekers, and those who were really seeking and those who were kind of dug into their doctrine and were not seeing. I believe this is going to be the case that you might see later in when Upatissa goes and tells his teacher at that time, Sanjay. I think he refuses to go. So this is kind of but anyways,
Thank you so much, Maitri. It's lovely. We're getting little snippets of different pieces of these passages. I think it's wonderful. And it's a great encouragement for everyone to do the homework of looking up the Khandaka 1, the great book, and have a read, because it's the most inspiring, beautiful account of these first disciples of the Buddha. Sanjaya, unfortunately, that's right. The teacher of Sariputta and Moggallana was not open. He was perhaps a bit attached to his own position or whatever it might have been. There were obscurations there for him, and he couldn't follow them in joining the Buddha's Sangha, along with a whole load of other friends and disciples at that point. Aya Sobana. Can't hear you, Aya.
There, now here I am. This really comes to the heart of the matter. In the Noble Quest, the Bodhisattva was concerned about death. And he inquired, what is the cause of death? And came to the answer, it's death, the cause is birth. And then traced it back. What is the cause of birth? From becoming, from craving, from clinging, from craving, and so forth. Down to the root cause of being the avidya, or the ignorance, as being the root of this whole cycle of causation, culminating in death. And several of us have spoken about how confronting death seems to be the most timely, urgent, significant Dhamma that they need to have a grip on. So then when this brief description, things which have a cause, he's declared the cause and the cessation. It just makes me I've always assumed that this really could point directly to the teaching on causation that was discovered by the Buddha and enunciated by him, which in particular is coming to this. It's really the ultimate puzzle for the human race, is to why we have to die. That's kind of the heart of the way that unenlightened humanity is really under the yoke of suffering, more so than anything else. And all of the other aspects are also necessary and essential in understanding the suffering that's caused by proliferation and identification and conceit and these other more intellectual or more psychological phenomenon is of course important, but like right there at the heart of the matter, beings who are born have to die, and then the cessation of that is the deathless.
Thank you so much, Aya Sobana. Yes, absolutely. The essential quest of Sariputta was to seek the deathless. How do we get out of this? Thank you so much, Ian. Richard, do you have a hand up again?
Thank you. Yes, just concerning Maitri's comment, I happen to have that book open right in front of me since the beginning, since I didn't know where you were getting your information from, but I knew that was described in that book, The Great Disciples of the Buddha. That information about the elder Asaji, this thought came to his mind, that's commentarial. Now, we need to be a little careful about accepting everything in commentarial literature, as many modern, scholars especially will explain to you, and by that I mean Bhikkhu Bodhi, can't remember how he calls himself, but Sujato, and others. What's in the commentaries now is not being accepted as 100% doctrinally with what's in the suttas. And so it's kind of like just a speculation of what might have been in his mind at that time. But since this is explained in here that, this is shortly after the first 60 arahats had come into the world, including 61, the Buddha, Buddha wouldn't have had that much time to talk about every single facet of the sutta, so, or the teaching, I mean. So I'm not sure, that particular quote from commentary really explains it. And in a sense, if you think about it, right, what Asaji says here is, says, I am but new to the training, friend. It is not long since I went forth from home, and I have come but recently to the doctrine and discipline. I cannot explain the Dharma in detail to you. If in reality he could have explained the Dharma in detail, the Arahant Asaji would be lying right there. And he's not capable of lying. And this is how we should look when we're looking at things, whether it's commentary or even a few suttas. Does it contradict the core teaching of the Buddha? And if we see a contradiction in there, then we can have reasonable certainty that somebody or somebody else, came up with that. So an arahant is not capable of lying, and that would have been a direct lie. I cannot explain the Dharma in detail to you, when in reality, he could have explained the Dharma in detail to him. So I would just be a little cautious in accepting a statement like this. Yeah, anyways, that's all I wanted to say. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for that point. Wonderful investigation, both Maitri and Richard. Much appreciation to you both. I'd like to come back to the Sutta, friends, and to read through again for us all this teaching from Asaji to Sariputta, and just to follow on a little bit with Sariputta's response. So let's return to the text. So Asaji gave this teaching to the wanderer Sariputta. Of causally arisen things, that is, Dhammas, the Buddha has declared their cause as well as their ending, Nirodha. This is the teaching of the great ascetic. When he heard this teaching, Sariputta experienced the stainless vision of the truth, the Dhamma Chakka, the eye of the Dhamma. Anything that has a beginning has an end. Everything that arises, samudaya Dhamma, sabbang, all things that arise, nirodha dhammanti, come to cessation. Now this is the truth, even just this much. The sorrowless state that you have penetrated unseen and neglected for innumerable eons. I just want to read that again. This is the truth, even just this much. The sorrowless state that you have penetrated, unseen and neglected for innumerable eons. So friends, this is Sariputta's response, and I find this very powerful, as I'm sure you do. This sorrowless state that has been unseen and neglected for so many eons. May we all come to this place of recognizing that which is neglected, that which is unseen, and has been so for so long. How beautiful that Sariputta immediately appreciates the sorrowless state, this understanding. All that arises passes away. There is a way out. There is a way beyond samsara. We have a choice. It's all in the mind, you could say. It's up to us to let go of all the causes of attachment to that which is constantly changing, right? Therefore, which is completely impersonal, which is unsatisfactory. All that arises arising due to causes, and therefore the causes can be removed and cessation can be experienced moment by moment. So what a beautiful teaching and a beautiful reflection from Sariputta on hearing these words of Assaji. I just want to invite, we don't have a lot of time, and I sort of feel like it might be quite good to meditate on these words, actually. But before we allow for some time and space to really appreciate these words, these teachings, just want to see if there's anybody else who'd like to comment, question, before we go into the silence, friends. Excellent. Oh, Richard, yes, please.
Thank you. So this idea that, all things subject to arising are subject to cessation, right? When that fully penetrates your mind, the only thing left is the untangling process. Because you still have habits and things like that, right? And depending on how far along you are. There's actually a sutta where Buddha talks about the steps in the path of 6, 7, and 8. And then after he finishes explaining that, he says, but you have what the person has already fully developed the earlier path stages, right? So when you see someone like Sariputta come, he's not been a noble disciple. He's not on the path per se, but steps 2 through 4, he's already fully established in himself. Now he suddenly gets 1. It transforms in a slight way 2 through 5, the 4 steps, 2 through 5, I misspoke. It transforms those steps because he's already living as a bhikkhu, not a Buddhist bhikkhu, but as a beggar, okay? He's living the life as a monk that begs for a living. That's how he makes his living, or she makes her living, by begging, okay? So then he rapidly goes through, or Mahamoggallana is maybe even a better example, because it only took him 1 week. Sariputta took 2 weeks, right? Through 5, through 6, through 6, through 7, through 8, right? And then attains arhatship, because they had already well established those earlier ones. So just getting that little bit of information transforms into sotapan, and then boom, 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 6, 7, 8, in rapid order, 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever. So when you get this understanding, all dhammas, right, that are subject to arising are subject to cessation. just like you were saying, right? That is the fundamental core, right? Or I don't have it in the book, but you had it in your poly, whatever it is. Is that Vinaya or, but where's that coming from?
It's the
Vinaya,
Vinaya
right?
Pitaka, Richard. It's
Yeah,
the Vinaya
sorry, I
Pitaka.
pronounced it one way. Vinaya, right.
Mm.
I learned to pronounce the word on my own without ever hearing it from anybody, so I had my own pronunciation. But anyways, so that's what I thought when I saw it. But when it says this is like the essence, right? It's true. There's no question about it. Now, all the rest is depending on how well you develop those other ones beforehand, right? Just going through that. And it can take, like Buddha said, it can take up to 7 lifetimes to attain arahantship, okay? But it just depends on the individual and how well they've mastered that 2 through 4 on their own without knowing the Buddha's teaching of the Eightfold Path and stuff like that. So it's just a matter of uncoupling, unconnecting your mind with your mana, with this wrong idea that, this is mine, this I am, this is myself. That's what you're doing. You're uncoupling that. You're getting rid of all habits of mind like that and uncoupling it, so you don't keep going to those habits and you free yourself and you get subtler and subtler and subtler, especially as you go up through the jhanas. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Sadhu. Thank you so much, Richard. That's beautiful. So, friends, I think I'd like to suggest that we return to the text. I'd like to invite you all to just open to these teachings very fully. We can sit, we can meditate. I'm going to read again the words of Asaji and then the reflection of Venerable Sariputta on receiving this teaching. And yeah, just to let it percolate, just to let it, I don't know, I think of it as like throwing a pebble into a pond, just to let the ripples ripple forth. We don't have to think too much in a way, but just to hear and let's sit together, let's receive and spaciously these teachings. And I'll invite Ayasobna, if you don't mind ringing the gong for us at the end. That would be really kind. Thank you. So please sit, friends, relax, closing the eyes, coming back into the body, the breath, very fully now. And just lend an ear to these teachings. Asaji gave this teaching to the wondrous Sariputta. He said, of causally arisen things, the Buddha has declared their cause as well as their ending. This is the teaching of the great ascetic. When he'd heard this teaching, Sariputta experienced the stainless vision of the truth. Anything that has a beginning has an end. Sariputta became a stream enterer with this insight, and he declared, now this is the truth, even just this much, the sorrowless state that you have penetrated, unseen and neglected for innumerable eons.
Suvakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhamman Namasami. Supatipando Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Welcome to continue your meditation until 7 o'clock this evening in California time, and then we can meet again.
Thank you, Aya.